Hi everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoy our shows, please like our videos and subscribe to our channel. And you can support us by clicking onto our website, ageoftruth.tv.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Age of Truth TV. I'm Lucas Alexander in Copenhagen, Denmark. It's the 5th of December 2019, and our guest today is a UFO researcher and documentary filmmaker. He is the American media representative for Billy Meier, a reclusive Swiss UFO photographer and alien contactee who's become quite controversial in the field of ufology and research on extraterrestrial life in the universe. Michael Horn. Good evening from Copenhagen, Denmark, and good midday to you, Michael Horn, joining us from Flagstaff, Arizona. Welcome to the show, and thank you very much for being with us.
Hi, Lucas. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm looking forward to our exchange here.
In what way can you provide evidence or authenticate that the Billy Meier UFO photographs taken between 1975 and 1981 are indeed real extraterrestrial UFO spaceships from elsewhere in the universe and not from Earth? Could they not be either photoshopped pictures or miniature models photographed in a certain way to make them appear bigger, or in fact be military crafts made by earthly material, steel or whatever, slightly advanced technology of the day, unknown to the general population, of course? They easily look a bit unadvanced for a supposedly highly advanced alien race or alien races. Michael.
Thank you, Lucas. Could you repeat the question? I'm kidding.
No, I'll take that later.
Okay. No, I'm having some fun with you. It's actually, I'm going to take you back even farther than 1975, because most people don't know that Billy Meier's first UFO photos that were ever actually seen and reviewed and published were taken in 1964. And in India, this is actually, I'm going to address all the points there, and if I forget any, you'll bring me back, by examining, and we have this an article on my website, I've had it up for 10 years, and it's all about what I call India, 1964, the foundational evidence. And if a person reads that article, and that article also has in it a newspaper article. See, Billy Meier was a 27-year-old vagabond, basically, traveling around, Asia, Europe, many places, as part of his education in the world, meaning also that in addition to his claimed contacts with the extraterrestrial teachers that he was encouraged to do a lot of self-study and to be on his own in the world and learn a lot of things in addition to what he had been learning since the age of 5, 22 years in there, if you will. So what he did, he was in India traveling around, and ultimately he would end up at what's called the Ashoka Ashram in Mehrauli, India. And there he would be studying Buddhism as part of this education pertaining to religion and everything else. So he would, know the background in as direct a way as he could as an Earthman studying from Earth people, not just from the alleged extraterrestrials. And I won't say alleged anymore because, I'll let people make up their mind on that. So I get excited about this information because Billy Meier comes to the attention of a reporter for the Delhi Statesman newspaper. Now, Delhi Statesman at the time in 1964 had already been in existence for 100 years. It wasn't like a throwaway tabloid. It was a very respected newspaper and still is, from what I understand. This particular reporter meets with Billy Meier and interviews him, takes a photograph of him. So we've got a photograph of Billy Meier, 1964 in India. And the remarkable thing is, this reporter starts to describe some of the 80 UFO photos in an album that the 27-year-old Meier already had.
He had already taken 80 pictures at
Yes.
27 in 1964.
Correct. And he had taken them with a Kodak Bellows type camera from the 1940s. Now, I'm familiar with that camera because my father had one, and when he would pose my sister and me endlessly in Chicago where we grew up, he would have to pull the thing out and look through, and you stand there and you wait for the whole deal. This is not a camera that you can do special effects with. You're lucky if you get a nice, good, clear photo, and Meier got plenty of them.
But it takes a very long time to take a picture with one of those old-fashioned cameras, huh?
Simply because you're in this process of, as I recall it, you're pulling the thing out, you're working with settings, and you're looking. So it's not a real quick process.
So the UFOs stayed there for his viewing pleasure, or for him to take the pictures.
Exactly. Because these photographs were taken with the cooperation and the prompting of his second extraterrestrial teacher, a woman named Esket. And this was part of the whole experience that he had over an 11-year period where she was tutoring him, if you will, on board the craft, taking him different places, including in time, and then also acting as a photo op for him, especially for these very, very important photographs in India. Now, you can't, just snap these out, number one. Number two, they're not anything you can do special effects with. And this gets very interesting. And again, everything I'm saying here, people will be able to determine the truth for themselves on the website, on the blog. But here's what's crucial about it. This man describes some of these photos, including one of the most unusual UFO photos you're ever going to see, because in this case, you're not looking at a UFO. What you're looking at in this particular photo, and we still have it, Billy Meier, with his cowboy hat on, is sitting cross-legged on the ground in India. Behind him, in the background, are some of the parts of the spire from the Ashoka ashram. And in the clouds, in the sky above him, is a hologram of a cross. Now, I've had my nose up to that photo. We filmed it and we photographed it from Billy's book when we were in Switzerland in 2006 producing the film called The Silent Revolution of Truth, which is available, downloaded, everything. Okay. That photo, I looked at that and I thought, wait a minute, because I'm still going to go, well, could this all be true? I've been in this now since 1979. Here I am with Billy. I've known him for 6 years, and now he opens up this album and there's that photo. So I've got my nose up to it because I'm looking, could this be painted onto the photograph? Could it be white adhesive tape? But then I see that the cross is partially behind clouds in the photograph. And there's no evidence that there's anything on that photograph.
Are we talking about a Christian cross, symbolic?
What we would call the traditional Christian cross, which is not the actual shape of the real cross of the crucifixion. That's another element in this story. I don't want to get too far afield, and I'll go anywhere you want, but I want to give you the basics and we can come back to anything. So Billy Meier is sitting there. There's a British woman that he knew who took the photograph, and a couple others of him in India and Pakistan, I believe. And there's Billy just sitting there. The other, let's say, almost dozen photographs from India are all of the ships, from Asket's ship alone to 8 of the craft in the sky. They're taken at the Ashoka ashram. In one of the photos where there's 8 of the craft in the sky, there's a young woman standing in the foreground. These photographs were taken while there was a young girl at the ashram who was the granddaughter of the head monk. Her name, Pobal Cheng. Now, why is this important? Because years later, Po Bo Cheng comes forward. She's now a retired UN diplomat, 12 years for Cambodia in the General Assembly. It's in the 1990s. People have been writing to her and saying, hey, wait a minute. We've been hearing about this man, Billy Meier, and UFOs in India, Ashoka Ashram. That's your grandfather's, but what do you have to say about this? And she was already retired. She was in private life. She came forward, I think it was 1998, that she gave a press conference, which was videotaped in Laughlin, Nevada. And she brought up another woman who had been a friend of hers there, another Indian woman. They showed some of Billy Meier's photos. They talked about where they were taken, and they just simply said, you know, this is what we saw. Billy Meier is telling the truth. We used to see him walking with this woman on the grounds of the Ashoka Ashram. She would come and then she would disappear up into the ships. And then Po Bo says, sometimes at night, just before I'd fall to sleep, this woman, Esket, would come into my room, and it was like she would just hum or sing to me. And in the morning, I would wake up, and I always felt like I knew a lot more than when I went to sleep at night.
What was her name?
The woman from Cambodia?
No. Was that the name? What was ASCAP?
Yes, ASKET. And we have on my website, we have a whole article because people have said Billy really took photographs of dancers on a Dean Martin show. Wasn't true. We explain how those photos were manipulated by people other than
dancers on a Dean Martin show.
Oh, yeah. And just 2 years ago, I arranged for the dancer who people said was the photographer to go and visit with Billy. I mean, this story has got so much to it, and it's
so many levels. So those dancers on the Dean Martin show were supposedly these alien beings from the Pleiades. Is that right?
According to the skeptics who accused Meier of hoaxing the photograph.
But Michael, who is Billy Meier really? Why do you think that he has become not only a witness of numerous UFO sightings, but even a Pleiadian ET contactee? Why him?
Right. Well, you know, we could say glibly, it's got to be somebody at some point. But the reason goes into things that I always introduce by saying this: according to the information in the case. And the reason I say that is because there are things that I cannot prove or disprove. I think I'll be able to certainly give enough hints as to what we can prove conclusively. And I'll just tell you right now, the case is authentic, the evidence is real, the prophecies are accurate, but how do we get there? So let's go to that question.
Yes, and especially since it's a very controversial case, and there are many people who certainly do not believe the whole Billy Meier story. And you, of course, are talking about it all over the world, trying to provide people with information on this. So please be very clear on what you think is factual and what you don't know the authentication.
Now, sure, and I'm going to say something because of what you just said. I'm going to make the following statement. In my opinion, and based on the evidence and all of the people who have contributed to examining and ultimately authenticating it, the Billy Meier UFO contacts are singularly authentic, and there is no other evidence to support any other evidence by any other person claiming to be in contact with ETs. Now, that's just my thing, and we can always come back to that because...
But that's only an opinion, right? Because there are countless people who are channelers and contactees, abductees, researchers into the field of extraterrestrial life, not only on planet Earth, but in the universe, and way-seers, way-showers, you name it, who are talking about being in contact with different alien races and groups and types from different parts of the universe, even on Earth as well. So why is Billy Meier's case the only real authentic one? Why not all of them?
Well, every one of the previous categories that you referred to, and every person in them that I've been able to look into over the past 40 years. And I have to tell you, I lived in Los Angeles. I went to channeling events starting in 1986. I've been around the block, and I only found the Meier material in 1979. I'm going to channeling events. I'm looking into other cases. I have not found one case or one person claiming contact who can produce one piece of verifiable, testable evidence that is then determined to be of extraterrestrial manufacture. Now, I'm always open for it. I get attacked. People say, oh, how can you say it's only Billy Meier? Well, I say, send me evidence. Now, let me...
Well, what about the Roswell crash in 1948? What about the Rendlesham Forest incident in 1980? What about the cow and animal mutilations and the Phoenix Lights and Betty and Barney Hill and countless other abduction accounts?
Okay, let me, well, they're still fresh in my memory. Roswell was a genuine event. As a matter of fact, now I will say, according to the information in the Meier case, there have been, up until the time they, that we know about, 8 or 9 crashes of discs of extraterrestrial origin in the US, in Russia, and some other places, which are usually very quickly scooped up by the military, and there's whole processes. And this reminded me of something that I will never forget, that it was easy to be reminded. In about 1953, I was in high school, 53 or 56, in Chicago. In a private school, I'm standing in the lobby of a beautiful old building that had become a private school. And one of my fellow students came up to me. I remember he came from the left, and we're talking, and he said, my dad said that they found a flying saucer and they took it to an Air Force base in Ohio. He was talking about Roswell. And at that point, they're calling it only flying saucers and all this stuff. And his dad was in the Air Force. And it stuck in my mind because I grew up listening to the radio shows and the TV shows of the 40s and 50s. Space. I made a record for A&M, Captain Tim.
It was the big thing at that time, right? It was heavily promoted.
Right.
UFO existence.
Sure, according to the Meier material, Roswell was a real case. The crash happened and the so-called occupants were not extraterrestrial visitors. They were androids that were created by the people in the Zeta Reticulum galaxy for the purpose of exploratories. And that this has been done for a long time, but for whatever reasons, that crash came down, that craft came down, it crashed, it was brought down, and those beings, those bodies were androids.
They were gray biological robots, as it were, right?
Right. We refer to them as grays because the gray element here, see, this is where, where this will and does go fly in the face of all the ufology stuff. And I'm very glad I will take it on face to face at any time. As a matter of fact, I have offered the skeptical organizations in America, I will come to their den and I will present the Meier, because they call the Meier case a hoax. And all right, we'll come back to this. So Roswell happened, but there's no abduction there. There's no extraterrestrials. There are robots, if you will.
They also talk about a UFO crash in 1941.
It could all well be so, but we do not have so-called abductions from them. And what I'll jump ahead to say is this abduction, evil gray alien thing is a manufacture of the US intelligence agencies that began during the Roosevelt administration to demonize extraterrestrial life. This actually goes back to about 1915, 1918, in that area, where the war, the First World War, which was technically the second, but the First World War is going on, and the antagonists are seeing these objects hovering in the skies. Each side thinks that this is a secret weapon of the other side. Over time, when nobody's attacked by it, they start to understand that they're observing something, observing them, that is not from this world. At the highest levels, even of the enemies of each other, there was a secrecy pact, because no country, no government to this day wants to really acknowledge that there is intelligent extraterrestrial life with technologies far beyond our capability that is not subject to any terrestrial constraint. military, political, religious, nothing. It can operate independently. When you have a world full of millions and billions of people, the powers that be don't think that that's to their advantage to say, oh yeah, there's visitors from outer space, of course, and they're observing us. People will kill themselves, they'll panic, there'll be chaos, anarchy, and we can always get to what's going on now in terms of the so-called disclosures. This is all a very carefully planned agenda of disinformation, a lot of it being run through the Pentagon and the US Navy and other parties that have long been involved.
Is it true that President Eisenhower met with alien beings in 1953? Many researchers talk about that.
No.
And made a treaty.
Yeah, here's the thing. Let's at least accept the premise from the Meier material, and it will only be of value if and when people themselves can come to the determination this is real and this information is real. And I'll show you in our conversation how people can be startlingly convinced of that themselves without any arm twisting. When you have an agenda by the government at the higher level. Now, not everybody in the US government knows anything about ETs. There's a dark side to the government, the secret military. The agenda to put out disinformation. Eisenhower met with aliens. We have time travel. So-and-so's been to Mars, and all of this stuff. It's false.
But why could it not be real? Why do you think it is false? Why are you so certain of that?
Well, let me go back to this premise. Where is the evidence? Now, that's what sets the Meier case apart from everything and everyone. And this is...
What about the Phoenix Lights? Wasn't it in 1997?
That could be an extraterrestrial craft, because we can get to the premise that there can be other civilizations that might observe or come in, but aren't contacting. We don't have any evidence of contact. Meier has said, and so have the Pleiadian for a long time, well, there have been other races that observe your world and what's going on. They don't interact with you. There are certain edicts, there's certain, let's say, prime directives, if you will, about non-interference, and it is the obligation of the Pleiadian, who have a very, very, very ancient mission connected to Earth.
When you say Pleiadian, that's from the Pleiades, right? It's a Pleiadian.
This might help people because the term Pleiadian, we're all kind of familiar with that if we're into UFOs. That is a term, a screen name, first published by Billy Meier in 1975 at the behest of the contact with the people who are not called Pleiadian. Now, I'll run this through. They refer to themselves as Pleiadian.
But they don't speak English, do they?
They speak German. And they can, if they need to be, they've got translators. They learn German.
The Pleiadian alien entities speak German?
Not as their language. They learned it for speaking to Billy, because he can't speak their language, and they had to learn to speak German and Swiss German so they could converse with him. And they can learn a language fully and completely within about 30 days. And they said we're even onto the technologies. It utilizes certain hypnosis technologies that they have, and we're not far from being able to do that. In some ways, we're very advanced technologically. We're very retarded spiritually and consciousness-wise. But let me get back to that.
But they are highly advanced. But they have to spend 30 days to learn Swiss German. Why can't they just communicate with him telepathically? They
do, but for the contacts, for the transcriptions, you have to understand, to date, there are over 45,000 pages of information, most of which is still in German, because people have to translate it into other languages. English, we have most of it so far. There's translations that now exist in Italian and in Spanish, to varying degrees of accuracy. They use German as the terrestrial language because it is the most precise and comprehensive in terms of meanings for words and specificity, and German and the languages that are most associated with it. For instance, I don't know if Danes can speak German. It probably can learn German quicker than I, because proximity and all of that stuff. Austrians speak German.
It's the same Germanic language, both German and English, and also the Scandinavian languages.
Right. And the Dutch, I have friends who are Dutch, and sometimes I'll see emails or whatever from them, and I can read some of it. Okay. I can read more German than I can speak. I can understand more than I can speak because I'm not around German speaking people. They use the German language for those very specific reasons. And telepathically, you brought it up. You see, when Billy is about to have a contact with him, what he learned to do starting at the age of 5 was to sense, first of all, to have a sensation around his forehead that he was going to be contacted. And then and still can receive the telepathic and transmit the telepathic to them. And they sometimes have had some conversations which are telepathically transmitted. But for the precision and the accuracy, when he meets with them in person, conversations are recorded. But they use rather sophisticated recording, and their devices, when they go back to their world or whatever, at a certain time when Billy's ready, he's in his office. Now, Billy has one hand, doesn't have a left arm. They telepathically transmit to him through a device they have the entire conversation that they had in symbol pictures, not in words. He was trained since childhood to identify and understand well over 3 million specific symbols that convey specific words or concepts.
That's a lot.
This is a book that was recently put out with some of Billy's photos that had been digitized for clarity. 617 photos, incredible, clear. And yes, I shipped them all over the world. And we'll get to that later. Let's focus on this. This is the important stuff here. So Billy then hand types out in German with one hand at up to 100 words per minute simultaneously as he's receiving the image and puts the conversation back together in German.
So they do not speak, they don't have to learn to speak Swiss German in order to communicate with him. They go into his mind and plant the information.
Yes, certain things, but they learned it because they would have and still have, as a matter of fact, possibly tonight, Thursday night, they meet with him in person, in his office, and they conduct conversations which are recorded. Every sentence the extraterrestrials speak is numbered. And why are they numbered? I'm glad I asked. Because when they started to publish, in 1975, he's having these meetings, he's transcribing, and they're sending stuff out in German to whoever wants to see it. Every sentence spoken by the extraterrestrials numbered. There might have been a handful of instances when that didn't get published that way, or when there was a... But why is that important? Because not only will it be ultimately translated into German, translated into English. I got the first translations in 79. In English, a little awkward English, but it was there. 1,800 pages that I was reading for months that really changed my life. Okay, let's say you've got those in English, in German, then somebody's got them in Spanish, and you decide to go to contact 221, where Quetzal or somebody is saying something, sentence number 113. Everybody's got the same information in the same sentence. There's no backdating possible. This is so simply brilliant that it eludes most people.
But it's Thursday today, the 5th of December here in 2019. So yes, Billy Meier is meeting up with his Pleiadian or Pleiadian, whatever the term is, his contacts today.
Quite possibly, because he meets with them.
But why can't we go directly to him then? We would love to take part in that and see what's happening.
Don't you think we all would? I mean, I've been with Billy. I had a meeting with Billy in 2011, and I was with two friends, one a Swedish guy and another guy, an American, I think, living in Europe. And we came into his office, and my nose that day wasn't that great, but these two guys said, "What's that lemony smell in here, Billy?" He said, "Oh, well, Florina was just here."
Florina?
That's the name of one of the alleged extraterrestrials. She was just here, and she wears like a lemon scent. She likes this lemon scent. And sure enough, we went and did some research, and it's mentioned in other contacts that Florina happens to have this lemon scent. The two guys I was with, they smelled it. I didn't smell it. And then we had our meeting, and it was during that meeting that I filmed and made some of the content for one of my films called As the Time Fulfills.
But why can't you, since you are his representative in English, why can't he allow you to take part in such a ceremony there, or to see that it's to authenticate that what he says is true?
It's simpler than that. Here's the reason. Billy's family is not allowed in for the meetings. They've seen the ships. In one occasion, his ex-wife saw one of the ETs by accident. They do not present themselves deliberately for other people, because if you allow one in, you have to allow the others. Well, what's wrong with us? And if you don't, then you've got infighting, and the whole purpose of the contact.
Well, it's not always that family members understand what journey you're on, not even just in this field, but in general. And then maybe if you have somebody who's very closely related to this and a representative like yourself, maybe he could allow you to be there so that you could really know what you're talking about because you had seen it.
Okay, we can only say this. They've determined that it isn't necessary nor productive for other people, because they know that human beings will start to fight with each other, feeling excluded, and everything goes south. Now, we don't have to accept that definition, but your most important point is knowing that it's authentic. I'm going to jump to two places how I know it's authentic. Now, the UFO part is easy. It's been authenticated starting in 1979, 80, and as recently as 2015, as recently as 2017, and it's still there's more authentication and research being done. One in-depth study being done by a former very, very high-level military man who knows the case is real, and he proved it already. Well, he's just going farther. How do I know the case is real? It's very simple. In that documentation, which I've had in my hands, I've had books, everything, from his earliest contacts, starting in 1975, the information. A funny thing happened to me shortly after I got the 1,800 pages in 1986. One day in 1988, I opened up a local newspaper in LA where I was living. And there was an article, a new discovery by Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories about A-bomb testing tied to the ozone damage. And I start to read it, and there's some percentages in there. And I go, wait a minute. I know this already. How could I know this already? It's a new discovery. And then a little light bulb went off. I reached under the bed. I pulled out the first 100 pages from 1975. And there was the first mention of this same information about the ozone damage tied into the atomic explosions. And the percentages were very close to what we had just discovered. Then when I did more research, I found out that Billy first published information about the ozone damage in 1951. So 1986, our Lawrence Livermore Laboratories is publishing these new findings. Billy's already published it starting 35 years ago. Before that.
With what specifically?
He published a letter sent around the world to all sorts of people. Okay, scientists, universities, etc. But hold on,
About what?
About the environmental damage, the cause of it, the nature of it, the specifics of the drought, the famine, the destruction of the species coming, the ozone damage, the floods, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and all the stuff that was coming, and the reasons why this was going to proceed and be so intense after the new millennium and after 2020, what's coming to us.
Are you talking about climate change now?
Part of that, yeah, climate change.
But climate change is part of a New World Order agenda, right? UN Agenda 21 plan.
Climate destruction is now where it is. It's no longer climate change, and it's unstoppable.
The Club of Rome is an elite secret society which was formed in 1968. And in the early 1970s, they wrote a manifesto, a book, where they actually talked about creating climate change. They have an actual quote that says, "In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and thus the real enemy then is humanity itself. Believe humanity requires a common motivation, namely a common adversary, in order to realize world government. It does not matter if this common enemy is a real one or invented for the purpose." End of quote by the Club of Rome. What are your thoughts on that?
Billy Meier published his first information on climate destruction in 1951, in 58, in 64, in 75, in 76, in 87. So let me go back and explain something.
So you don't believe it's a New World Order agenda, a UN Agenda 21 plan?
Wait, let's build to that. Let me ask you a question. Do you know any people that are vegetarians?
I think we all do.
Do you know that Hitler was a vegetarian?
No.
Yes, he was a vegetarian. Therefore, are all vegetarians Nazis? No.
That's a strange statement and a comparison that I can't comment on.
I'm going to explain it to you. Here. Okay. What you're saying is an alleged evil entity, and there's plenty of evil entities. I'm not arguing whether or not this particular group have a lot of things that they say that they can be accurate, can be inaccurate, that they can try to use. And this is called disinformation. What we are being
but we're not talking about disinformation here. We're talking about a published statement from the Club of Rome, a secret society formed by the same people who were behind forming the Bilderberg Group and the Trilateral Commission, Council of Foreign Relations, and you name it, who actually publicized this as also part, if you look into it, as for a UN Agenda 21 plan.
So let me ask you the simplest question in logic. If they published it, does it mean that there is no legitimate climate change and concern about it?
A lot of scientists, many of who are not allowed to speak in the mainstream media because they don't push the official narrative. They're saying that there are ongoing natural climate changes happening all the time. It's always been there. There's been a little ice age, and then the world gets the world gets a little hotter, and it's not a big danger. It's not man-made. There is no CO2 scare.
Yes, here's the thing. Climate change per se, as you just described it, is natural. We're told it's natural on any planet. It's now 75% man-made. You may have noticed in the papers recently an 18,000-year-old pup of either a dog or a wolf was discovered in Siberia, very well preserved, right? Are you familiar with that? Just happened.
No.
Okay, it's in the news. 18,000-year-old perfectly preserved pup. It was wonderful, and you can read about this. Why would that be important to this discussion? Because it's reflecting an aspect of the climate destruction that is so critical and suppressed. What is that? It's the melting of the permafrost, which now is revealing things that have been long buried. And when the permafrost melts, methane is released in great amounts.
But that's the official narrative that a lot of scientists are saying is not true. Not the scientists who are allowed to speak in the... So what you're saying is that what we hear in the mainstream news, in the mainstream media, we can depend on that. We can rely on that. That is the truth. There is no indoctrination or, collective mind control agenda behind that, pushing a certain agenda.
There is a tremendous negative agenda in the news. And as a matter of fact, if you read the American news, most scientists are saying there's nothing to worry about, no climate change, even though we have so much evidence of it. People will go
What evidence do we have?
I'll give you an example. I have a friend who is a former Navy SEAL. He lived in Long Beach, California for a while, and I met him in Switzerland at the Meier place. He's a diver. He's a Navy SEAL, he's a diver. And some years ago, and I have it on my website, he took some photographs in Long Beach where they had the markers for the height of the sea level. A couple years later, he sent me photographs showing that it's now been obliterated. The sea, not a pond, the sea has come up over, and the city of Long Beach removed all references to sea levels and things like that because of that. Now, he moved to Hawaii. What did he do there? He took photographs in Hawaii of a certain area in the beach. He sent me subsequent photographs where now the condos, these big expensive buildings in Maui, they're putting sandbags up where the sea is already up, practically lapping at the doors because the sea levels are rising.
But maybe it's part of pushing that agenda. You can always take pictures of something that will show you a certain little fragment or a little moment of something, like they did with a very skinny polar bear, which happened to be a dying polar bear, not because of climate change.
Okay, well, Lucas, let's back up to a premise here. You asked me in the beginning, why don't I accept the reality of UFO contactees and channelers? And you're telling me, I publish evidence up the wazoo on my blog and on my people at Meier and company. They have reams of this. We are in danger of an atmospheric collapse. There's a danger of a shutdown of the ocean conveyor belts. The Pleiadian gave Meier information within days of the Fukushima disaster. They gave him the full readout on the meltdown at Fukushima. They told him that the nuclear power particles were already present and detectable over Northern Europe, and published a bunch of information that's only come out subsequently within the past couple of years. They gave him the information on the true nature of the BP oil spill, right down to the fact that the substances they were using to try to bind the oil had sunk to the ocean floor and were causing great problems. That was then a new scientific discovery.
But didn't the Pleiadian also provide him with evidence about a New World Order agenda? Of course, the New World Order agenda has been pushed and it's been spoken about publicly by almost every president and prime minister, heads of state, movers and shakers around the world have been talking about wanting to implement a New World Order, which is the base for a one world government.
In 1958, Billy Meier warned that the EU, in 1958, the European Union, would be a dictatorship that would come forward with the agenda to biochip every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth. And that unless people woke up to that, there would be a global enslavement. The two main powers, the EU and the US, would be behind this. This is underway. You have people in Sweden.
They're already microchipping people.
Yes. We have people in Wisconsin in America, stupid, worse than sheep and cows.
So why would climate change and the agenda on, the CO2 scare, man-made, that the world is going under, which is heavily promoted all over the world, which is the most popular topic on the mainstream news in 2019, since 2009 and 2010. Why would that not be part of a media manipulation and a government plan?
The simple answer is forewarned about before the Club of Rome by Meier and the Pleiadian. I was reading this stuff, this documentation before it became a public conspiracy, and there's enough, let's put it this way.
But maybe they planned it way before they published it.
That's conspiratorial thinking.
Well, a conspiracy is two or more people conspiring to do something that is not out in the open, publicly talked about.
I'm going to talk about what's out in the open for you too, because I want to do this, and I will spend as much time as you want, and I'll go back over anything, but I want to say this. Right now, your viewers, your audience, who's interested in all of this, as we are, will have the opportunity for free, they don't have to buy anything, to look at the documentation that I have published from Meier. I didn't come up with it. Look, I was into air pollution and those concerns when I was 16 years old in Chicago. I just put up a blog about a project that I created with two friends in 1968, warning about air pollution. It came to me. We created a space hero thing in the whole thing. 1968, we couldn't get arrested. I moved from New York City, where the air pollution was already present, to LA, where it was just starting to get bad.
But have you also studied the New World Order agenda and the fact that all the presidents have talked about it? Even George Herbert Walker Bush, in his speech in, I think, September 11, believe it or not, 10 years before the 9/11 attacks in 1991.
Look, I am aware of all of these agendas, the things that I can say look factual, the things that are conspiratorial. My point right here and now is, because I know you haven't had time to go through everything on my site, and let your audience, I want to announce something right here too that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to do a free UFO home study course. I'll use Twitter and YouTube and all of this stuff, free. And I'm going to give people these pieces of the puzzle, quite literally. They get to watch it, look at it, write and send me emails and questions and tweets and everything. I will every week be putting up a video to address it all, and we will get into all this in depth. But what I want to say about it is let us know that the position from the Pleiadian about that, including the evil agenda, if you read what they had to say about the history of the United States and the agenda and the machinations of the US and some other countries I may not possibly name right now for security purposes, you would go, oh, gee, I think maybe they did know about it. I'll just leave it at that for the moment.
The so-called Illuminati plan.
The Illuminati, per se, are a now not very powerful organization. This is an old group.
How do you know that?
Remember, I gave you the caveat, according to the information in the case, but let me explain a little more. There are various groups, and Meier lumps them under a different term, the Dark Order. And this refers to military, financial, economic, political, and religious groups and individuals, not all operating as a singular unitary force to agree to all share power, but vying for power and control. And there are some very dark agendas, and I only say this because we will get to it.
What about the 13 and more bloodline families?
Listen, you know what? You can have the best blood flowing through your veins, as let's say the Rockefellers did. They had one, I think Michael Rockefeller was a guy who didn't toe the party line, and he died in the jungles of Brazil, and he was friends with a guy who, there's all these things.
What about David Rockefeller, who just died, who was almost 100 years old? And of course, the founder of the Bilderberg Group and the Trilateral Commission and whatnot.
We could go off on these conspiratorial things. I think you have David Icke.
That's not conspiratorial. That's factual.
I believe it. I'm saying to you, if the focus of this show is to determine whether or not my claim that the Billy Meier UFO contacts are singularly authentic, we should march towards the evidence on that.
Well, we should definitely do that, and I have a lot of questions prepared for that. But now you were pushing the official narrative about climate change, so we want to just address that before we go on to other things. But I don't really hear you talk much about the New World Order agenda or you and Agenda 21.
I just told you that in 1958, Billy Meier published information about the agenda of one of the more powerful elements right now of what you would be calling the New World Order, which is the EU.
What about America?
Of course, he mentioned both. He published information about a German woman who's being moved into a position of power by Merkel. And by the way, in 1948, Meier's teacher gave him about 200 or so specific predictions, including one that a crazy woman in Germany would open the floodgates to massive crime and destabilization throughout Germany, which would spread through Europe and the world. Within a number of years after the new millennium, there would be something like 300 million migrant refugees, because this woman has an agenda where she actually hates her own country. And so if you want to talk about things that could be...
But what makes you think it's her specific agenda? Isn't that also part of a let's just say, secret society agenda?
I'm simply establishing that in 1948, in detail, Meier was given this information. I think it's a mistake for us right now to take and try to make the whole show about this dimension. I prefer to first establish how I can prove to you that the Meier case is real. Then we can I published a blog yesterday on reverse engineering the predictions. There is a way that people can understand how to know if something's true and then to know what is coming. And then if they want to deal with the peripherals, if you will, of climate change, New World Order, Illuminati, and all that, things that they cannot do a damn thing about.
Why can't they do a damn thing about it? Isn't information everything and crucial, particularly at this point? Could Billy Meier not be a planted agent more so than a prophet? If he's able to know so much about the future, then perhaps he could be closely connected to secret factions of the government or military feeding him this information if it's been planned a long time ago. Or even perhaps be an MK Ultra mind control victim or subject who's being programmed with this information. Why an extraterrestrial contactee?
Okay, let me give you some answers to those questions. This is, in a way, it's an unfortunate presupposition for this reason. In the past 10,000 years on Earth, at least according to the information in this case, we've had a cumulative 250 years of peace scattered throughout 10,000 years. Has that 9,750 years of war and terrorism and destruction been conducted by extraterrestrials, or has it been lunatic human beings on Earth through their religions, through their belief systems, through their politics, through their governments that have destroyed each other by the hundreds of millions and billions? Or are we going to run to the premise, which is to me, a fantasy, I call it conspiracy, whatever. Billy Meier, who survived 23 attempts on his life, having his left arm ripped off his body, having his children almost kidnapped before him at knife point, supposedly is a MK Ultra guy. If they had that technology, they're not going to mess around with a reclusive Swiss guy and go to all this trouble when they could take over the world. Because if MK Ultra, who does have walking mind control experiments...
Well, it's a military experiment, which was, of course, already developed in the 40s by the Nazis.
I understand. You have one example of a walking mind control experiment in the person of Corey Goode, self-admitted mind control experiment. He's one of the people who wants to gather all together all the UFO believers because he meets with blue aliens.
Well, let's not talk about the other researchers, at least for now, but talk about Billy Meier, who in fact is from Switzerland and of course very close to where the Nazis were based, if we talk about how they developed MK Ultra when they brought these Nazi scientists to America.
And Hitler was a vegetarian. Everything doesn't tie together because this, therefore that. That's why it's taken so long for this material to come into the world, even obliquely, so that people find it, because human beings of Earth refuse to think logically. We're going to pull everything in instead of looking at the actual evidence, the real evidence. And this is why, in terms of the UFO community, they don't want to have anything to do with me, because I come right out and I say, hi, this is a wonderful conference we're having. How come I'm the only person on the stage with evidence?
If he actually was a deep state or military, let's just say, mind-controlled victim, or even just working for them in order to bring out this information, they could have staged these UFO discs. They don't look actually very believable when you talk about a very highly advanced alien race. Even in Star Wars, they had more advanced spaceships in the 70s than these so-called flying discs that you see very clearly on his pictures, of course.
Yes, because you think and by you, I mean any and everybody in our world, we think we know what they should look like, right? After all, we should know what a real UFO looks like.
They look a little bit like what we've seen pictures of these Nazi flying saucers that they said that they had in the 40s.
The Nazis did develop early stage alternative craft.
So couldn't they be military, the ones that are on the Billy Meier pictures?
You know, honestly, Lucas, we could speculate.
But have you not asked yourself that question?
I didn't have to, because my reasoning skills told me that if this was terrestrial technology with the things that we've seen in the films and the photos and the evidence from Meier, they wouldn't be dicking around with some one-armed Swiss guy. They would have used this to take over the world. Your one world.
Maybe they did. A lot of researchers, many, are talking about alien races, reptilian mostly, working with factions of our government.
For which they have zero evidence, and which this is what drives me nuts.
What would be the evidence? They wouldn't take pictures of it, would they? Or maybe they did.
Well, you know, the fact is that there are actually some snowmen made out of snow and ice that never melt that work in the underground bases in Dulce. Prove me wrong. This is the problem with ufology. Ufology is the least scientific field of study that I have ever encountered. It is the least scientific, with the least high standards.
Well, if you do believe that there are alien beings from other worlds, some who are contacting Billy Meier, you even say that he's the only one that they're contacting on this on planet Earth. Why would it not be possible, especially if there's a New World Order agenda, which they've talked about publicly, that alien races, malevolent alien races, would take over high-level factions of the government in order to take over the planet?
I'll give you the answer for it. If high-level real ETs exist, and we're saying that they do, we're saying that that technology is theirs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, don't you think that since we are even saying that these things have been spotted since the First World War, don't you think by now, and even earlier around that time, with that technology, they could have taken over every government? And here's
maybe they did.
Well, you just asked why didn't they? I'm going to give you an explanation. If they did, and we're just seeing a really primitive consciousness operating, showing that the world has been taken over by, really?
Well, as long as the general public just go about their business and work hard every day for small money, then maybe everything is okay. And if they believe what they hear in the mainstream news. Organized slavery, really, isn't it?
These are social questions, let's just say. They're questions about theories.
It's one of some of the most important questions, which is something that you can look at, you can touch, you can see, you're a part of, more so than alien entities.
You know, there's different ways throughout history that we've determined what evidence is, what real evidence is. And we don't really rely on theories. We posit theories, and then we try to prove that they're real or let the evidence show that they're not. So let me respectfully again say, the first order of business for me is not to dabble in. I don't mind getting to that, but that's after we determine whether or not, and each person, may not even happen during this interview, we could do more, whether or not the Billy Meier UFO contacts happen to be singularly authentic. Now, we have 6 categories of physical evidence. We have thousands of pages of informational evidence. And what we have that is most important, in my opinion, is we have what I call the higher standard of proof, the prophetically accurate scientific, environmental, geopolitical, and economic information verifiably published by Billy Meier from years to decades before so-called official discovery, and that means by NASA, JPL, USGS, etc. And what I mean here, just so people grasp, we could argue all day about UFO photos, even though we have independent experts up the wazoo saying, these are large unknown craft. We don't have any reference point for them being made here on Earth. Okay, great. People still want to argue the metal samples. They want to argue. They want to argue sound recordings. You can't argue with a copyright. Now, let me give you a living example of what I mean. Why am I talking about copyrights, right? In 2013, I was in Las Vegas, Nevada at an event, UFO event, where I had a table with books and DVDs and everything. And a man came over, middle-aged guy, arms are folded, and he's shaking his head left to right. No. I said, excuse me, sir, can I help you? I'm very interested in the UFO subject, but this Billy Meier case, it's got to be a hoax. I said, really? What do you do, sir? He said, I'm a retired judge. I said, you're a retired judge. Your Honor, could I step in your courtroom? And he didn't miss a beat. He said, come right on in. How can I help you? And he was ready to nail my butt to the wall, right? So I said to him, Your Honor, NASA claims that they are the first to discover the reason why the surface of the planet Mercury is contracting, shrinking. They claim that they discovered it first. But I've got a buddy in Switzerland who says he discovered it first. Would I have to prove that to you? And he said, well, of course you'd have to prove it. So I said, Your Honor, you see this book? Yes. Do you see the copyright date on this page? Yes, I do. And I opened to where I knew this was, and I said, this man in this, which you can see is dated even prior to the late publication, but Billy Meier says to this alleged extraterrestrial woman, I've always wanted to know the reason for the contraction of the surface of the planet Mercury. And she says, well, that's not difficult. It's because of the metal core. So I said to him at that point, Your Honor, in your courtroom, who prevails? And he said, you do. How much is the book? How much is the DVD, etc.? Now, why is that valuable? Because the internationally recognized standard, we certainly use it in the US and it's recognized as a standard, is a copyright. And the copyright means this document, script, book, whatever, was verifiably published by this date. This is the first verifiable proof of first publication, right? Now, we have to date over 250 specific examples, the majority of which have copyright established first proof. How did the man know? Take extraterrestrials and UFOs out of the picture for a minute. How did he know the specific nature of the conditions on Mars, lightning on Mars, the substances that filled in the canals on Mars, how much water actually was on Mars, all decades before we discovered it? Now, I brought these questions to a scientist here in Flagstaff who's working on the Mars mission now. On Mars, the rover they operate, he's a photo imaging expert, Ken Herkenhoff. And I said to him, how do you answer these things? And he said, well, let me take them and I'll get back to you. Ken Herkenhoff is a scientist working on the Mars. He didn't even know there was lightning on Mars. He wrote, I published the article on it. He said, oh, maybe Billy Meier is a lucky guesser. I said, really? 250 times?
Or maybe he's working for the military as an agent.
There's a conspiracy theory right there. Why isn't the fact good enough? Why do we want to take
because we do not know that it's a fact. It is hearsay.
We do know it's a fact.
How do we know it? Yeah, it was published, but how can he not be in the know, having been... Maybe he was told these things.
Lucas, you're speculating. In law, in science, in the military, you either give us the evidence and you give us the means, the motive, and the opportunity, not through speculation. Now let me give you something that a military investigator did.
Well, we need to ask questions into these things, particularly when somebody says it's an absolute fact, but we really don't know what could actually be behind it. There could be more to this than what we just hear from you, who is representing Billy Meier.
So what? Prove it. We've proved our side of it. As a matter of fact, look, I have a
But
trial.
where is that proof?
It's all
Is
over.
there more proof than any other UFO researcher or speaker in this field that you go against, by the way?
Yeah. I can make 4-hour presentations and then some, showing nothing but evidence and proof, and not a one of the people, including any of the people you've ever interviewed on this subject, can stand up to it because they can't put up one piece of evidence.
Well, they stand in their truth, don't
I don't
they?
care. I don't care about standing in truth. Give me facts. Because I can stand in truth that I could sit here and channel all sorts of BS for you because I've gleaned enough stuff and make it sound believable. I don't have any beliefs. We deal only with facts.
But
Now,
George Orwell wrote the book 1984 was it in 48? And before that, Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World. They were both in the know. We're living in such an environment now, right?
they foresaw certain things. There have been many people, many throughout history, who've gotten glimpses and pieces of things. They don't have what's in the Meier material.
Maybe they were in the know as well.
Fine, but let's get back. I want to keep you on track so you can put me to the test. I want to explain something to you about what's called means, motive, and opportunity. Now, 2.5 years, almost 3 years ago, on a Saturday morning, I got a call out of the blue from a gruff-sounding guy who asked if I represented the Billy Meier case. I said I did. He said, all I'm going to tell you is my name's Joe, and I'm an investigator. Will you speak to me about this? And I said, of course. Why? He said, because I think it's a hoax. I said, fine, let's go. 3 months, back and forth, every Saturday morning. Joe called, told me nothing else about it. I didn't know what he investigated or anything. He disappears and he pops back into my life in late August of 2017. He says, I'm going to tell you who I am. And then I'll tell you about your Billy Meier case. I said, okay, who are you? He said, I'm the former top investigator for the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation, tasked with protecting the security of the United States of America. And I also was a background investigator for the Department of Defense. Neither one of these organizations prioritize UFOs. And when I was in the service, we didn't talk about UFOs. I vetted personally. I interviewed, vetted, investigated people who could attain to high office, end up with their hands on the nuclear trigger. And he goes through this whole thing. And he says, now, don't take my word for it. I said, what do you mean? He says, check your email. He sent me the photocopies of all of his commendations and all. He worked for the government. He was who he said. So I said, well, okay, and what about the Meier case? He said, well, I went back to your 1964 evidence. I looked into the background of the newspaper and the reporter and to Pobal Cheng. He said, let me just tell you this. Your Billy Meier case is 100% ironclad, authentic, and I will take on any skeptic on your behalf. He then took on 2 of the UFO skeptics and demolished them. And he called me up and he said, look, these people don't know anything. They don't understand research, and they're all over the place. It's too easy to blow them out of the water. I'm going to do an in-depth investigation on the entire case. This case is authentic. Signed his name, the whole thing. Okay.
But why couldn't all of it, or a lot of it, be the truth and be real? Why only the Billy Meier case? Why not all of, what about the other things? The animal mutilations and the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident?
Military. By the way, who's the woman standing behind you there, over there, that I see? By the table.
Pardon?
Huh?
Pardon?
The woman standing over here. Isn't there a woman standing in your studio?
A woman?
So my point is this. I say I see a woman there, and your UFO experts say they see this, and that.
Oh, you're pulling my leg.
I am pulling your leg.
Oh, interesting. You had me there for a moment, huh?
And maybe some of these UFO experts have everybody for a little bit too.
Maybe you have people as well. You're good at it, aren't you?
Well, people can go and look at all of it for free. They don't have to.
But why can't I interview Billy Meier himself? I'd love to hear it from his own mouth. It's
pointless because you only have somebody else saying, oh yeah, of course, I meet with the extraterrestrial. Well, how do I know that? Why aren't I meeting?
Well, first account experiences are of course more, let's just say, interesting in a way. What led you on to actually start to be, well, to be the representative for Billy Meier?
All right, let me tell you. In 1986, when I had first received this information, the printed information, I met another guy who was at the time representing the Meier material, an American guy. And in his apartment, he had a book of the prophecies and predictions from 1981. And in those predictions, Billy Meier published that in the coming time, the United States of America will have two terrible civil wars, one following upon the other. And the country will break up into 5 territories. And I said to my friend Randy, with whom I made a film, I said, what's this guy Billy talking about? There's never going to be a civil war again in America. And he said, I don't know why Billy said that. Over the years, I said to you, I have 250 plus specific examples in all of the sciences where Meier, I don't mean that he's just saying they'll discover a new tree. I'm talking about scientific information, physics, astronomy, every planet in the solar system, and every time that we can make a discovery, it corroborates what he published. So I'm going, okay, but I'm worried about, could this guy possibly be faking? I tried to trick him 4 times in 3 years, starting in 2006. And I'm on record with it because he just happened to tell me something about something in his office, and I thought, that's far out. I came back 6 months later. I asked him again, same answer. Came back a year later, same answer. Came back a year later, same answer. Just to him, it was all factual. When you speak about interviewing somebody, if you want to get it directly from Billy, get it the way he's put it down, where nothing's going to change. You can hold him to that.
But why doesn't he do interviews himself?
Because, look, first of all, he's 82. He's had a heart valve replacement. He has phantom limb pain. He had experienced a bad fall. He broke his shoulder in 3 places. I think it's about a year and a half ago. Leads me to an amazing story, and this leads me into the heart of this case, if you will. Billy Meier breaks his shoulder. I've got a photograph of him with one of the other guys there. They took him to Zurich. He fell, I think, 3 places. It's all broken. The doctor says, we can't operate on you. He says, why? He says, because you've got that heart valve. If we operate, we're probably going to kill you. We can't risk it. Go home. Nothing we can do. So he goes home. They put a black band, like a tight band, to keep his only good arm close to his body. Photographs all over the place. We go, my girlfriend and I go to Switzerland in May. We walk in, and there's Billy. He's walking around. He's making coffee with his wife. And I said to him, Billy, whoa, your arm. He says, oh, yeah, all better. I fixed it. I said, you fixed it. Yeah. I said, might have the thoughts. He says, yeah. So I said, wait a minute, Billy, because X-rays, we know you got really badly screwed up here. Do you have to know all the fibers, the nerves, He says, no. I said, so if someone wants to heal something themselves, they don't have to know all the anatomy? He said, no, they have to know how to use the mind to focus on the improvement constantly and not be pushed up. Well, what do you think? I have a bookstore connected to my site. We sell books by Meier. We have one photo book. That's it. The rest of it, it's about the information given to him, the information he himself has gotten about how to learn to think, how to get ourselves out of this pit on earth where we are, whoever we want to blame for it, we're bearing the brunt of some bad stuff that isn't going to get better. And there's another thing happening that might concern you. You've heard of asteroid Apophis. There's a 5-part interview with me in that tabloid in the UK, the Express. Their last interview was about a little more than a month ago on the 15th. They interviewed me and they ran a 5-part thing warning about this asteroid Apophis. Now, why? Where'd that come from, right? It so happens that verifiably in 1981, Billy Meier is told that there is an object that the Pleiadians say, we simply call it the red meteor. It's heading towards Earth, and it's going to have 2 approach dates. It's going to be April 13th, 2029, or April 13th, 2036. On one of those days, unless the scientists of your world come together and deflect it, don't try to blow it up. Unless you deflect it, it's going to hit, and we're going to tell you right where it's going to hit.
But maybe the Pleiadians can just take it away.
Cannot.
Eliminate it.
No, because it's up to us. But let's go a little farther on this, just so you have something and you folks have something to sink your teeth into and dig into, because everything I'm telling you, you can check out for yourselves.
But if I just want to get back to the fact that Billy Meier is not doing interviews. So he had a really bad fall, but then he was better and now he's good. So why can't he do interviews now?
Because as good as he is, he's 82, he has a family, he has his work in Switzerland, and he doesn't speak English fluently enough. He doesn't want to be interviewed and do what he has tasked me at my request to do.
Did he organize that you were supposed to be the speaker on his behalf, the representative?
I approached them during my 4th or 5th visit in 2004, and I said, Billy, here's what I'd like to do. I've been making presentations on your information since 1987. I'm fascinated. I've got, a lot of stuff here. I want to officially represent you in the English-speaking world, certainly in America. And here are the terms that I would have. I want to do it for free because people in America are not very developed in their mind. They think everybody only does everything for money. So they're going to accuse me, like they accuse you of being a fraud, they'll accuse me of being in for money. So let me do it for free. And you don't pay me anything and I don't pay you anything.
So Billy Meier is not sponsoring you or funding you, and nobody behind the scenes is actually funding you and what you do with your work?
Of course not. Of course, no, not, of course not. Now, are there people that every now and then will donate to my channel or donate to me? Yeah, but nobody gets rich on that. Well, I mean, I haven't learned how to do it yet, and I don't focus on it.
So nobody is backing you financially?
No, nobody is backing me financially, not to the tune of more than $25 here or $100
So
sometime.
why are you doing it, Michael?
Because it's the damn truth, and because it's the most important thing in all of human history, which could come to a screeching halt.
But you're also pushing a political agenda at the same time.
No, I have no political.
Things that these Pleiadian entities told Billy Meier, which is now being pushed by the official, this is the official narrative about climate change and terrorism and lots of things that are happening by specific groups.
There are people who are on many sides of the political aisle. We are not political. We are not, we wrote an article, I wrote an article and then put all of Meier's information in there, calling out Greta Thunberg, calling out the environmental movement as full of a bunch of phonies, profiteers, and liars who, instead of doing anything meaningful, further pollute the environment with their jet planes and their stupid conferences.
So you do not believe that Greta Thunberg is speaking the truth and that she is coming from a real place? Or is she also part of a...
Greta
she also planned it?
Greta Thunberg, as the person that she is, may very well believe that she's doing the right thing. I would agree we have an environmental crisis, but I don't agree with her. I don't agree with Greenpeace and other things. I agree with some people who've helped to stop certain things to protect the environment, because I know firsthand, I know things. And anybody can know them if they just read the damn material and stop worrying about UFOs and chasing things they're never, ever in this life going to have an opportunity to do anything of meaning with. But other people are going to sell them the books and make the fancy speeches about absolute BS for which they have no evidence.
But you're doing the same. You're also presenting your evidence, or in fact, Billy Meier's evidence.
I'm presenting evidence so that people can make up their own mind. You show me where any of these people who certainly don't like me bringing it up and who will never debate me, and I am open to debate any of them, whether it's David Icke or Richard Dolan or Nick Pope, I will debate any of these people, and the debate will end very quickly, because when I ask them for their evidence, which we will never get to because they will never do it, they don't have any. But they've sold a nice game to people that want to believe it. Oh, UFOs, aliens, abductions, reptilians, the government, Greys are abducting our babies.
But if there are Pleiadians speaking, communicating to Billy Meier, who then tells you to tell everybody else, why don't you think that there could be other alien races like reptilians and insectoids and whatever they're called. And some of them could actually be part of a government takeover.
I'm still wondering about that woman in the back room that you say isn't there.
Uh-huh.
So
I'm not falling for it twice.
Okay, Lucas. Good man. My point is this. Could be...
So do you think that there are reptilian alien races in the universe and maybe on Earth?
In the universe? Could be. On Earth? No. There's no evidence.
So there are no reptilians on Earth?
Look, Lucas, let me explain one thing and to your audience. The people that I work with are NASA aerospace people, scientists, military investigators, legal minds, experts in photography, special effects, etc. I don't spend my time with people who float theories because we want to look at what is.
Yeah, but all of those people will certainly say that none of those things exist.
They will say they have not seen the evidence. There's a difference. You see, you've got people polluting this whole UFO world, telling you that it's all real. People like me simply say, where's the evidence?
But why do you think that there are so many researchers in this field, many who do not agree and who also have some kind of internal fighting thing going on as well? But they all say, for example, that the reptilians exists. They talk about Nordics, they talk about tall whites, grays, you name it, Ebens.
There is, to date, no evidence that I or my extended team have ever seen. Forget what the Pleiadian or Billy say about it. This puts you and all my friends in the UFO community in a rather uncomfortable place, if I may. You cannot give me something to look at where I can give you my opinion because you don't have anything.
I do not have the evidence that that Pleiadians or Pleiadians exist.
Fine.
What about the Lyrans or the Lyrians or whatever they're called, or the people from other star systems?
You raised an excellent point. Let's not go past it. You don't have evidence that Pleiadian exists. Now, what if I agree with you and I say, I can't prove the Pleiadian exists. What I can prove is that this man is in contact with some other beings. I can't prove whether they're Lyran or Pleiadian or whatever, or Arcturan. I can only prove that his evidence is of non-terrestrial manufacture, and his information, his scientific, prophetically accurate information, is impossible for any of us to have produced or known or presented. Even, and I've given you one example, I went to a top Mars USGS scientist.
Could this Pleiadian entity, extraterrestrial, who's contacting Billy Meier, not in fact be a malevolent disinformer, perhaps a reptilian alien or even an archon, a demon entity taking form as a good-looking, benevolent being, spreading lies and New World Order agenda plans for the future, such as info on man-made climate change or Islamic terror attacks, which you've spoken about?
So if you're thirsty, you're really thirsty, and I bring you a glass of water, and someone says, well, that could be a glass of water, or it really could be an invisible poison created by beings from the netherworlds, underground, that are really intending, we're lost in space.
Well,
it's irrelevant.
A very relevant question when you're talking about one type of alien being. Could they not take form as a malevolent disinformer?
I have no evidence ever to support that theory. I've seen no evidence.
But you've not seen the evidence that this Pleiadian entity exists either.
I have seen the... Oh, no, not exactly right. I have evidence that other beings exist. They are said to be called, according to the information of the case, they are said to call themselves Pleiadian. Do I know that that is what they call themselves? No. Is it matter? What is the most important thing if I have two choices?
But they could not be disinformers.
Well, based on the evidence, they've given us no disinformation.
Well, if they're promoting climate change and Islamic
terror
attacks...
That's not real. That's someone else's theory that it's not true. I say let people decide for themselves, because in the coming times, as the sea levels rise, if they do, and when, let's say, La Palma volcano blows and a tidal wave sweeps across the eastern seaboard of America and takes 20 million lives.
But could that not be HARP in Alaska? And there's a European version of HARP in Tromsø in Norway. And there's also DEW or
Lucas,
directed energy weapons.
Yeah, all those things we know about this. If you or anybody in your audience either is an attorney or has been in a court of law, has been a witness or prosecutor or whatever, they understand that there are procedures by which we come to legal decisions that would say someone is guilty or someone is not guilty. Now, a not guilty person can also be guilty, or they can be innocent. Those are different terminologies. In a legal proceeding, in a scientific process, facts are looked at to be determined whether or not they're true.
But can we even depend on that? Was O.J. Simpson not guilty? Or somebody else?
So lawyers, and perhaps you've known some in your life.
Lawyers can be bought.
If we go there, we're going to go, please don't give me any UFO theories because they're so diluted in credibility. Okay, let's just look at how we determine what's real in life the best way we can. We have personal experiences. I'm holding this glass. Someone says, I held that glass yesterday. Well, how do I know? Do you have any evidence? Well, here's a photograph with a witness, and here's a clock on the wall in this location. Okay, well, they can't prove it. Does it mean they didn't hold it? So human beings, in reality, we go through rigorous processes to try to determine 99+% of history. We can't prove it. We only have records, right? We can't prove it. So what would be the best way of proving that something happened? Let's say that there really was a contact. The most important true story in all of human history would be confirmed existence of a extraterrestrial race and contact with that race. Well, how would you, what? Someone's going to say, oh yeah, well, I've got all these people. I've been to channeling events. They all said that they've been meeting with ET. Really? The most important thing in history? And well, what was their evidence? Well, they said it was true. Oh, you mean like in religion, when every religion rests on this premise? What's in this book is true because this book says it's true. Oh, geez, that's not too good. I can't take that into a court of law. I can't take that into kindergarten. Oh, I want to teach this book. It's true. Well, how do you know it's true? Well, the book says it's true. Well, how are we going to know if it's really true that there's an extraterrestrial race and there's been contact?
But how do you know that there's not a malevolent race?
We're not there yet, Lucas.
Malevolent race, part of controlling high-level factions of the government, for example.
Who cares? We're sick enough with our governments, ETs. I mean, they're going to come let's control this.
People care about the truth.
Lucas, you're being tangential here. And I take this extremely seriously. I give them my time freely. I do it all voluntarily.
So do we.
Good. Then let's presume we're interested in truth. And if we're interested in truth, it's pointless for us to float. Could this be? Could that be? If you say to me, hey, David Icke came on the show and he gave us a box full of reptilian scales and they were analyzed and they're from no known species on Earth. And he says that they're from the reptilian race that he says exists. I say, well, dang, that's pretty good evidence.
Well, he's definitely talking about that everything is made of atoms, even the glass that you were just holding up. And atoms have no solidity. Therefore, we are in a three-dimensional existence, reality. And what is beyond the 3 dimensions? That is something we cannot see with our eyes.
Lucas, we haven't gotten there yet.
Well, we are here now.
There are subatomic levels that are far smaller than atoms. And there are electrons everywhere, and we get it. But let's focus, because if we don't look, I've gone to Switzerland at my own expense 20 times. I've made 5 films, interviewed Meier, tried to trick him, interviewed other eyewitnesses. I've seen UFOs on 7 occasions. I only think 2 of those occasions were ET, because one of them happened when I lived in the mountains of Brazil in 2011. and within 20 feet of a small object that came down. And then I went to Switzerland the next week, and I told Billy, he says, oh yeah, that's the monitoring discs. Well, it just so happens that there are photographs of those discs. I didn't know it until I looked, I think probably even one in this book. They are small things that they play and send around the planet. I have friends who are physicists in Austria.
So they're not military crafts?
No. So, but I'm just jumping a little bit because you like to jump, but I want to go back to this. We could say this could be this and could be that. No. Because you'll be thrown out of, you bring that could be into a court of law, you're there for about 30 seconds when you open your mouth, and the first time they say, would you present your evidence? And you go, they say, good night. Now, I would love to be in a court of law with this. All the way, not just that judge, not just the trial attorney.
But what would be your best evidence if you were in a court of law?
It's the scientific information that Meier published on so much stuff before we ever knew it was there. Verifiably accurate. I have the transcripts, the dated, copyrighted. We've got things about the moon, about Mars, about Venus, Saturn, Jupiter. Meier published information in October of 1978, October 19th, 1978, I think, contact 115. He described Io, a moon of Jupiter, as being the most volcanically active body in the solar system. In addition to describing some rings of Jupiter we didn't know about, he described the composition of the ejecta, of the stuff coming out of those volcanoes, how high it went, the speed at which it was propelled, the fact that it was drawn into the torus around Jupiter. That's in October of 78. In March, precisely, actually, I believe it was on March 12th, Monday, March 12th, 1979, 5 months later, JPL NASA announced their major discovery. They just looked at all the photos, and they just discovered that Io is the most volcanically active body in the solar system. That information was already in the hands of Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens, the lead investigator on the Meier case. That's the type of thing that shuts down coulda, woulda, shoulda, because it's proven.
What if Billy Meier is in fact very tied to the military and they are providing him with information?
Well, wait, so you're saying Billy Meier,
information.
So you're saying that he's actually taking authentic
I am
photos?
posing the question.
It's irrelevant, because what if doesn't fly? It doesn't fly. This flies.
Why doesn't it fly?
Because, well, this is what I'm trying to explain to you. We are dealing with evidence. I'm going to say something, and do not be offended. I'm going to assume. And so I say it right now, and I hope you'll leave it in this recording. There is not one of the people, not one in the UFO community claiming to be contactees, channeling, walk-ins, whatever you want to call it, that has one piece of evidence, and not a one of them will debate me, and not anybody in this entire field will take on the Meier material because it's authentic and they're not. So coulda, woulda, shoulda, ask the other people. I don't deal with coulda. I deal with what is and what we can.
So you're talking in absolutes.
I'm talking in what we've been able to prove ironclad.
Isn't it a very legitimate and good question to ask whether Billy Meier could be linked to the military in order to obtain all this information and putting it out? It could be part of a UFO agenda that the government has maybe perhaps already.
I'll tell you why it isn't a good question. Because that line of question, should I start to actually interrogate you on that line of questioning, it would fall apart because you have no evidence. You can't even establish.
It's not about evidence, it's a question.
It's a meaningless question. You're talking to somebody who's basically, I'm a research scientist. I've spent 40 years researching, testing. I knew the original investigators in this case. I've talked to eyewitnesses up the wazoo. I've done investigation. Real investigators in any field don't go coulda, because where is the means, the motive, and the opportunity? That's what you would be tasked with substantiating. Couldn't Billy Meier have done this? Where's the means? Where's the motive? And where's the opportunity? You've theorized something.
Well, the motive could be to promote a certain or specific agenda, some of which we hear on the mainstream news.
Establish the means first. Because Billy Meier has been blacklisted in the mainstream media for decades. So when we get to that, it's going to be pointless.
Well, the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about UFOs very much.
Now you're contradicting yourself. So,
well, they're always putting out a little bit of information, and then they say that they don't want to talk about it.
Let's go back to your concern. He could have been involved with the military. So the first question is, would you please establish the means, but not it could have been this. You must establish the connection. Otherwise, your case is thrown out. You don't prevail. I prevailed with a judge because I established that the evidence was ironclad. You're just speculating.
So it's just a coincidence that he was told these things, these secrets, by these Pleiadians, and then it actually comes out as something official from NASA or from a government establishment being presented as the official story in the mainstream media later on, after he was told by this Pleiadian
It's not a coincidence. It's a deliberate mechanism by highly intelligent people who are hope against hope, that we have enough common sense and enough logical thinking abilities to make the connection that when a man who has no possible means of getting this information has this information in abundance and publishes it, and that decades later it's corroborated that a logical thinking person, a military person, a lawyer, a scientist is going to say, how could he have known? What's the means by which he got this? Not, is it a coincidence? Was there confetti and he put the pieces together? Did 10,000 monkeys type it up? How did he get that?
Maybe he got them from them.
From who?
Military. Secret government. Something.
Do you have evidence to show that there is a secret military that you are specifically referring to that would in some way or shape provide evidence to this man?
Well, we certainly know for a fact that there's something called the New World Order. We also know about all the secret societies and all of the meetings that they're having every year without it being talked about or actually presented on the mainstream news.
Mr. Alexander, you're positing theories, and I'm just showing you how those of us who've spent decades examining this material used logic and science, means, motive, and opportunity with the best minds that we could, independent people we posed the questions and we got the answers that this man could not have obtained this information any other way.
Aha. So if you're also working, and Billy in some way is also connected possibly to military, or you work with people from NASA or scientists, whatever you're talking about, what do you think about the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident? Lots of people and military people talked about that.
Right. I think it's possible that it was a real event. Unfortunately, there's no longer physical evidence, but there's eyewitnesses, and eyewitnesses can be an important but not a finally determining element in determining truthfulness, such as you would do it in a court of law. I just have to send this person, tell them I can't talk to them now. Sorry, okay. And let me explain why. Let me explain how eyewitnesses can or can't be of service. And this was an example used by the military investigator. And then I'll come right back specifically to Rendlesham, which I don't have a problem with it being real. I just say, unfortunately, we can't prove it. We can only go circumstantially. Let's say my military friend said, let me explain to you how this works. Consider that there might be a murder. Somebody's been shot. There's a body down there. There's a gun. There's a wallet with a driver's license, photo. And there's an eyewitness who said he saw the person whose photograph is in there. Do you think it's likely that that person killed the guy in the ground? Possibly. What do you think? I mean, it's not a trick question. You've got the body, you've got a man's gun, his ID, and an eyewitness. There's only one problem. There's a videotape of the guy who apparently was the assassin at a party with people 500 miles away at that time. He's been out of town for the whole weekend. He couldn't have done it. So despite the fact you've got the weapon, you've got an eyewitness, and you got the wallet, that one piece of evidence screws the pooch. So could Rendlesham be a real event? Yes, of course. I don't have a particular axe to grind. I believe, if you want to go believe, because I can't prove it, I think the people who all say they just saw something. I can't say that even if they think it's extraterrestrial.
There are many people talking about it, not just
there could
one.
be 100 of them. It doesn't mean it's extraterrestrial. It simply means X number of people claim that they saw this. I don't have a problem with that. I simply, just like the people who marched forward with Stephen Greer, I offered publicly Stephen Greer the whole case. He didn't even look at me because he wants to peddle absolute BS and milk the public for their money for it. He had nice people coming forward who told the truth. They saw something. Did it make it extraterrestrial? No. Did they prove it was extraterrestrial? No. Does Stephen Greer have one piece of verifiably extra? No.
So what about the cow and animal mutilations?
They are said by the Pleiadian through the Meier material. There's Billy Meier, if you want to just do it that way, says these are secret military operations that are meant to carry forth the agenda created during the Roosevelt administration and promoted through the CIA and the Dark Order to keep people afraid of evil aliens.
But this also happened in the late 70s when Linda Moulton Howe started investigating this.
Linda Moulton Howe. Let me give you a little story about Linda Moulton Howe, and it's on my website, and I stand behind it. I won't call her any names. In 2006, I think it was, WAG TV from London contacted me about coming to interview Billy for 15 minutes. I said, sure, I'll be there on such and such a date. I'll get over there. They came. An hour and a half into the 15-minute interview, somebody walks into Billy's office and says, Billy, why don't you just show him the car? Oh, Billy goes, oh yeah, let's go look at the car. So we went outside, and his son, he's got a stepson who had a Subaru station wagon, silver one, parked outside. And on that station wagon, there are handprints embedded in the finish. These handprints have 7 fingers. They're etched into the surface of the car. In some cases, the prints go from fingertip to elbow. We have the photographs on my website. Linda Moulton Howe finds out about this, and she contacts me and she says, oh, can I bring scientists to examine? I said, I'll get back to you. I contact Billy. Can Linda Moulton Howe come over with scientists? Yes, just don't destroy the cars, take all the photos, test, whatever you want. She never came because she publishes, she makes her little career, her living on the disinformation agenda of the biggest load of crap in ufology. Alien abductions, cattle mutilations, evil aliens. She didn't want to deal with real evidence of something that she wouldn't be able to profit from.
Well, she's talking about secret government documents that she's looking into.
Yes, of course. Well,
and government officials.
I don't care. I'm scientifically minded. Give me the thing that you want us to look at. We've had 40 years of looking at Meier stuff. It's ironclad. We've got people who are skeptics, like the military guy comes at me as a skeptic. He validates and he authenticates the case and he puts his name behind it. I mean, what are we talking about?
She's also, and many of these researchers that you talk about are all for the best possible evidence and looking into it, authenticate if it's true or not.
Say it again. I missed that. In terms of the Meier case, the people looking, are you talking about the Meier?
Just in general, what they're researching about UFOs and the existence of alien or extraterrestrial beings on Earth and in the universe.
All I can tell you is, since 1979, independent experts in photography, filmmaking, special effects, metallurgy, sound recordings, etc., military, eyewitness interviewers, lie detector experts who have looked at the evidence have said it's authentic. What's the see? Here's my problem with you with this line of thinking. What's the problem with you really finding the real deal? And you don't not believing me, but what if this is all true? What will it mean to you? Let's turn it around. What will it mean to your audience if what I'm telling you is so? If there's a darn Apophis asteroid coming because Meier was first warned about it, NASA discovers it and says it's no problem, then NASA changes their own size estimate to within 25 meters of what Meier was told. Now NASA's saying, well, maybe it's a little more dangerous than we think. And everybody suppresses the fact, no, it's going to hit between the North Sea and the Black Sea unless you people get together and deflect it. Stop dicking around. You've been given, you want contact with ETs.
But don't they have technology already that can stop that?
Who have the technology?
The military. Supposedly they have very advanced technology that the general population has not been told anything about.
The military does have advanced technology, but they don't have anything other than what all that is needed is an atomic explosion to generate a shockwave. They've got it. They don't need to have Star Wars here.
Why are you engaging yourself in a verbal fight publicly with other UFO researchers in this field? Why are you spending your energy on trying to discredit other people's research, claims, or evidence in this field instead of just holding on to your own truth and present your case, which is the Billy Meier case? Why are they wrong and you right?
You've got a couple questions there, but you asked first why I spend my time. I actually spend very little time with people who, are in the UFO community. I have far more outreach.
But you're mentioning many names, calling them out as frauds.
Yes, because they're lying. They're lying. Does it matter to you? And I will stand on that. And none of them have ever sued me and said, this Michael Horn is a defamer. I'm not a liar. My evidence is real. People don't care about the truth anymore. I grew up at a time, my friend, when truth actually still had some meaning, that if you lied, you got your mouth washed out with soap.
But now, everybody wants the truth. They all want the truth. We all want the truth.
Oh, really? Then
Yes.
Why are these people lying to you and to the rest? They can't and they haven't presented evidence, but they're upset that I'm calling them out. That's real life. We've got a group called Exopolitics, but they're a little unhappy that I offered them all the Meier material for free. They don't want to look at it. They want politics. The extraterrestrials are not dealing with us politically. They are dealing with us scientifically and factually. So these people want oh, it's me. I should just stay in my truth and let our truth. No, there aren't a dozen or 500 truths about contact and the existence of extraterrestrial race. If you don't have scientific evidence in the real world, don't go opening your mouths, people. Don't go peddling your garbage. Of course, who am I to stop you from bilking people? Now, I'm not sitting here to try to get you to buy a lot of stuff. Yeah, do I have a shop? Wonderful. I'm telling you I'm going to do a free home study course because I would like the people who are all wrapped up in ufology to get their heads out of the dark areas and see that this pertains to their existence, to their survival, not to the airy-fairy, coulda, woulda, be reptilians and the BS that these liars are promoting. Why shouldn't I be upset if I care about the truth and if I've given 40 years and I'm doing it voluntarily and I put out 5 films on it. I've taken on the top skeptics in the world and kicked their butts, and I am just very, very happy to stand. I would come and debate any of the people, including David Icke. They won't do it because they are all, to the last person, motivated by profit, and that's my opinion.
Why do you think they're motivated by profit?
Well, what else are they going to do? None of them apparently have any kind of credentials with anything. I've got a laundry list of accomplishments apart from all of this.
Then you haven't looked into David Icke's material, have you? He's talking about so many other things than these reptilians that he's always
he's got the reptilians here and he's got it's all, the Dark Order, this and please. I don't even want to go there.
He's talking about politics, the New World Order, and the agenda.
I am not talking about politics. I am talking about information which in the Meier case says, yes, there are many parties in your world of various levels of power and control that are vying to control, you know, your finances, your lives. And Billy, 2.5 years ago said, you're in danger because there is an elite that has an agenda to wipe out a large portion of humankind. The problem is, my friend, the UFO community is ignorant of what's in the Meier case. They buy into, oh, hoaxed UFO. They can't get to the fact that Meier's been warning. Meier warned, I mean, we have 250 of these things. Meier in 1987 publishes prophecies that include the destruction of the World Trade Center, but he also publishes a little thing that says the Russians are going to move their troops to Arkhangelsk in preparation for their attacks against Scandinavia. But don't worry, Denmark is not going to be attacked because it's not significant. The attacks will be against Sweden, Finland, and Norway. Okay.
Really?
Oh, yes. Now just hold 1 second, because I got that onto my website in 2002. Russians are going to move their troops to Arkhangelsk. In 2011, the Russians moved their troops to Arkhangelsk, and a guy that I had known for 50 years who thought I was nuts to be involved in the Meier case called me up and said, bring your video camera over. I've got a different opinion about Billy Meier now. I was in the military. I know that area. It's under cloud cover. How and why is this reclusive Swiss guy in 87 talking about the Russians moving their troops to Arkhangelsk in preparation? And then he in the same material where America gets attacked by Russia and China in these old prophecies, he says, well, it would make sense if they move to northern Siberia and they get across the Bering Straits and they can bisect Alaska. He says, that man, Billy Meier, is not crazy. Your government should be paying attention to it, and your military and all the rest of it. But here's the real problem, Lucas. You've got a lot of coulda, woulda, shouldas, but you don't know this material. And honest, in all fairness, why would you? You're deluged by all these charlatans and quacks who make the claims that sound fantastic and they make for good conversations, but they're not going to stand up to this kind of questioning. And it's okay.
How often are you in contact with Billy Meier?
I'm in contact with his representative regularly. In Switzerland.
Do you ever visit him in Switzerland these days?
I've been there 20 times, and my last visit was in May.
In May of 2019?
Yeah.
And how is he doing? What is he doing at the moment? What is the latest hot topic, so to speak, if you can reveal that?
Some of the latest hot topics build upon the early predictions from 1987 and 81 that the United States of America is going to push for globalization and being the world's policeman. This will be a false movement by the US government and military under the guise of peaceful globalization. We're not new to this, okay? And that if things go a certain way, it will result in the utter and complete destruction of our country and others when other countries come together with Russia and China against the US, when we have pushed enough to create that war. We are now moving along in that direction. They had mentioned a couple of years ago, Billy said, the Americans are going to move their troops to northern Germany in alliance with NATO so they can continue to provoke Russia. 6 months later, a year later, they moved their troops there. You talked about the reason why we should know about all these things. You're right, we should know, but not so that we can worry about evil aliens and reptilians and things you can't prove.
What does he urge people to do then? Or what do you suggest people do?
That's where we get down to the real nitty gritty. And that's where I probably will pick up a book. Hold on. I'm glad you asked. Hold on 1 second. But this is a book called The Might of the Thoughts. It's one of Meier's books. There's no mention of UFOs and extraterrestrials, because what it is a book of what's called the spiritual teaching. The spiritual teaching is a non-religious, belief-free teaching with no superstitions, no rituals, no gods, no deities, no saints, angels, devils, ascended masters, or otherwise no gurus. A book of how to take complete self-responsibility for one's own thinking and thereby through fully understanding and developing that, how to create the life that one wants. And as more and more people come together, learning how to think, they will create the world that we should be having now, but that we don't, because we've allowed and depended upon the two stupid twin siblings known as politics and religion, where we've turned our power over to outside forces, in one case with religion, completely imaginary, unprovable, never to be seen or delivered. And in case of politics, the criminal psychopathic mindset that always has an agenda of advantage over others to get what it wants. So we are not political. We can see that these things operate as politics. We can see that religion operates. But the science of how to think, which is the same teaching that the alleged extraterrestrials work with, the same thing, and that they live by in a far more advanced state of knowledge and practice, is what the whole contacts are really about. It's to get our attention. We get the eye candy. We get these fantastic and still irreproducible UFO photos, people. Billy Meier took these. I mean, look at this stuff. Pre-digital, no Photoshop, didn't exist. Billy Meier, that one-armed man in Switzerland, takes the clearest, most remarkable photographs. Okay, that's pretty cool, but we can still argue about them, obviously. Then we get to the prophetically accurate scientific information, copyright substantiated, and the argument ends there.
So when you're talking about spirituality, is that in the same as the law of attraction, the power of thought?
Yes and no. What we get taught in terms of the power of thought, thought is all powerful. But what gets taught all too often in things like, you know, the law of attraction, thrive, this, that, and the other thing, is a corruption, a very materialistic focus that bypasses all of the real steps of consciousness and thinking and self-responsibility for that which we create consciously or otherwise.
Well, it's also about attracting other people in your lives more positively.
Well, people, if they understand a little more about that, which isn't really covered to the best of my knowledge and what I've seen when I watched films about the law of attraction, it's appealing to people's loneliness, to their hopefulness, to the desire for fame and fortune. We will, and we can, and we will attract people into our lives. And there's a way to do it that is much more based on our authenticity as human beings, our values, our ethics, those things that we stand for, those things that we live by, because what we want, that attraction, we want resonance.
So it is still law of attraction.
And more. It's like saying, well, this is just that. The law of cause and effect is one of the core immutable laws, but it's and the law of attraction is part of the law of cause and effect. The golden rule is part of the law of cause and effect. It's not that we diminish something by trying to, we don't want to just pigeonhole something. Well, it's this thing. Because when we say the law of attraction, then people's identification goes to that which they've learned up till now. But that may not be, it may be only 30% of really what we're talking about or less. So the spiritual teaching is something that's read rather slowly and studied, and we have study groups throughout the world where people read the material and then discuss it to see what the other human beings are perceiving and grasping, and so that we start to create commonality around like-minded, high value, not just that we have a common interest, whether it's UFOs or playing football. No, it's got to be something more. Humankind, we are on a piece of cosmic lint. Everything looks bigger to us than it really is. And if we get clobbered by an asteroid, we won't recognize life. We'll be just struggling through noxious gases. And I mean, honestly, we've been too conditioned by movies, sci-fi, and by, the internet and all the disinformation and cartoons. We don't take life seriously. Those of us, and I'm not saying you don't, but that's the mindset. If people can run off and believe things that are total hocus pocus, and then you try to hammer home scientific fact, my gosh, aren't you folks interested in knowing the likelihood of this thing coming in and where it's going to hit has been foretold by people that are just thousands of years in advance of us technologically, and they don't want to see us be destroyed. But if we are not smart enough to go through the steps of determining the validity of the evidence, and by the way, I published some of these transcripts, especially about Apophis. I published it in a comic book form, translated into 6 languages. It's free online. It's clear enough that even a scientist could understand it. Not just one of us folks that has a bigger mindset.
So what does Billy Meier or you say about 5G?
Horrible, completely toxic. They've warned about, if you looked into the health-related material in the Meier case going back decades, where they warned about, well, I mean, the cell phones, the microwave, what kinds of energies can be made safe and what can't. 5G is Cancer City. We're stupid. Just for a buck, here it is. These people, oh, well, they want faster internet or faster phone service. Well, let's fry their brains with damn 5G. Now, some places people are speaking up about it, I think in Switzerland. But most people are worse than sheep. They're going to let themselves just be controlled through that. Mind control possibilities? Sure, all of that's there. But it's bad enough for the physical being and for the consciousness. It destroys things in consciousness to be bombarded by these frequencies. You will find when you go through the Meier material that a lot of the things that we think we've just discovered, like we've just discovered, sliced bread, Meier's published these things decades ago.
Do you think that 5G is like, well, connecting the human brain to AI, artificial intelligence?
I don't know, but I can tell you this. In 1995, your viewers, that's almost 25 years ago? Yeah. 20 years ago. 25 years ago. Your viewers and your audience can read the documentation where Meier describes what's coming with what we now call AI, with the chipping and the connecting of things to the brain, people who will amputate their limbs to connect fancy chips to nerve endings, things that will blow your mind. Oh, it can't be. But there's things that have already happened, of course, since he published it. In 1987, in the same document with the World Trade Center and the Russian military movements, they specifically warn that the worst things that are coming, if this Third World War, really the fourth, but if the Third World War happens, it will be computer-controlled weapons, cloned fighting machines, laser, biological, chemical, 1987. And then here's the kicker.
Well, if it's been an agenda for a long, long time, then that's not really very surprising, isn't it? That they knew that already back then.
Except for one thing. The 1987 document was written, according to this information, by the prophet Enoch over 10,000 years ago, because he, like Meier and a number of other prophets, were contact persons for the Pleiadian. This is at least a 13,500-year-long mission on Earth. This is not just from yesterday. There are predictions from Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, that are hair-raising.
You're talking about biblical figures now.
Yes.
And you're also claiming that Billy Meier is the incarnation of Jesus Christ, who you call Emmanuel.
No. Yes, because what the information, again, people can determine this for themselves. The information is that we had prophets, Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, Muhammad, and Billy. Now, what? Who's Emmanuel? What? Billy? Muhammad? What? Hold on. Yeah. There never was a human being who walked the face of this earth named Jesus Christ. There is not one verifiable, true historical record, even though there were 60 historians in the overall area in which he was said to have traveled around.
So if he was called Yeshua, as some people say, or Emmanuel or something else, you still believe or think that Billy Meier is the incarnation of that person that we know as Jesus
Not
Christ.
Of the person. This is why people, please folks, UFOs are going to get you nowhere. Studying and thinking might get you to protect your lives here a bit. What is said in this case, and here's one that I cannot prove, so people can do with it what they want. The reason that Meier, this guy now, is running around is because there's a very ancient mission, if you will, that started hundreds of thousands of years ago with the forefathers of the extraterrestrials to try to do certain things in the universe with evolving planets and peoples and bring them some order and truth if they were off the course. In terms of Earth, let's say that Jeremiah, Isaiah, Elijah, Enoch or Henoch was the first prophet who was an extraterrestrial who had died on Earth and reincarnated as another person. Because the law of reincarnation, which you can read about, it's got nothing to do with past life regression, which is another load of crap. You can't get there from here. Okay, reincarnation works that when a person dies in their world, their spirit, which is not our personality, it's not Lucas, it's not Michael, it's a spirit, it will reincarnate into a new, different personality in the course of evolution.
Is that in fact a karma wheel soul trap?
No.
Orchestrated by these so-called archon entities, also known in Christian terms as demons, or in Islamic terms as jinns.
Right. Those are human beings' creations of gobbledygook that don't exist.
So there are not entities like that?
No.
So why are we being reincarnated? What happens to us when we die?
Okay, let's explain it as best I can in the simplest terms, and my understanding isn't as deep. There's the human spirit, which is an immortal, eternal part piece of what they call the creation. The creation is this universe as we know it, and everything in it is enlivened, created, sustained by this energetic creation, not a deity, not a God running around with his beard somewhere and you don't play a harp and sit on his cloud. The creation, it's an energetic, it's a consciousness, it's a lot to grapple with, and even the Pleiadian and Meier grapple with it, but that's what they've learned.
Source.
Look, source, spirit, source, all that is, whatever you come, the creation is the term that's used here. Each human being is enlivened, each personality, by this minuscule part deep in the center of the brain called the human spirit that reincarnates countless times over millions to billions of years in the course of evolution, so that we think of it as the spirit eventually has gained so much knowledge and wisdom that it is ready to merge back into the creational energy.
Who decides that we are not complete, that our spirit being is not complete and okay? And why are our minds wiped when we go back to Earth again in a new body?
Well, let's go to this. There's no who determining. There are laws of creation. What are laws of creation? Is cause and effect.
Created by who?
It is the creation. I don't want to argue now because I want to give you just the overview, and then if you want to go farther, there's plenty to study and work out. So they're saying there is the creation. This is an energetic consciousness that is the source and sustainer of all that exists. Its energy enlivens and is part of everything, animate and inanimate. Its laws are immutable. And we learn through all of these incarnations at a rate of speed that we can handle in each incarnation to learn, to work with, to evolve, to advance, to progress in every level, hopefully not only in terms of our technology, but in terms of our consciousness and spiritual development, whereby eventually they come together and merge, and in terms of science and technology and spirituality are all congruent. They're the same thing because there's no dissonance between them. The soul, that the term you just used, which many people use, doesn't exist the way we've been taught through religion. The soul is really what is called the psyche, and it is located where? Around the, wait for it, solar plexus, the plexus of the nerves and the emotions and part of the consciousness. Again, this is just a description. It's not an argument. It's an answer that people will have to do their own thinking. This soul, this personality-based energetic that is what we most identify with as ourselves, upon death, that personality is dissolving. All of the accomplishments, the knowledge, the wisdom, the love from a lifetime is absorbed into the spirit, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, and retained. It goes into what they call the beyond, simply an etheric realm.
Is that the white light frequency that some people, that religious people call heaven?
There is no such thing in that way. There's no place to go and see Uncle Joe and Aunt Edna gambling around and butterflies and bees. No, it doesn't happen because reincarnation is the law. So what happens? And we as personalities...
But can you not choose not to be reincarnated again?
No, because the you you're talking about is our personalities within each lifetime.
Spirit being. Full consciousness.
We do not have full consciousness yet, and we do not have spiritual consciousness. We are still evolving consciousness.
Not when we die and leave the body. We are not full consciousness.
No, what happens is we only know as much as we know at the end of each life, and all this that's taken into the spirit. There's a love behind this that we don't like as material attached beings.
Especially if you have to reincarnate and have a terrible life with famine or hunger or some kind of slavery and not a very good life.
Well, that's why in terms of what's taught, it isn't karma in terms of, oh, you did this and so you're going to be punished next life. Because then no one would ever evolve. You just accumulate bad things lifetime. The way it works more is that the more you clarify your thinking, your actions, your feelings, and refine and develop them in any given lifetime, you're taking that with you. That means that the spirit that has evolved more reincarnates over and over more into an environment that is compatible with its level of evolution. Meaning, you're not likely, we'll say that we're relatively evolved conscious people, we're living, doing our best. We're not going to evolve into a jungle of Borneo or in the middle of Afghanistan where it's still very primitive. I'm just using this generically. There might be great places in Afghanistan. I'm not putting it in. I'm just saying you're not going to suddenly be reincarnating in something evolutionarily too far below, perhaps with the exception that you may be incarnating for an opportunity that could be for your spirit form and your new personality to evolve to be bringing more of what your entire beingness, if you will.
But this is the Buddhist.
It's different in Buddhism. You don't reincarnate as a cantaloupe or a monkey. You're evolving. There's no ghosts.
But it really does sound like a karma wheel soul trap to me, if you cannot decide whether or not you want to go back to Earth or not.
There is no option here because it's not a you personality. We're not familiar with this idea yet. The spiritual teaching has to be studied, and then you can decide, does it make sense or not? But no, we are not being forced back into anything. Do you remember a last lifetime? Or do you feel now that you've been forced into a lifetime? No. Whether your conscious mind is grabbing it now or not, you are in a current new state of evolution, probably over your past life. You're doing a forward thinking, forward movement. You're searching for answers. You're bringing new things. You're not feeling punished, I don't think. I mean, maybe there's things in life we all don't like and don't want to come back to. Well, that's why we're being taught how to think, to change it, so that while we're alive in this life, we're making our lives better. We are attracting, if you want to use that word, those things and people that will serve us in our evolution, but we have to be responsible for paying attention to the intuition, for exploring things. It's not that, oh, I want a Ferrari.
Even though we have to go back into another body with a wiped memory and live a totally new life.
According to the teaching, these allegedly advanced extraterrestrials also do. And here's another bit of good news. In the future time, our lifespans are going to be rather enhanced and lengthened back to what they should have been, but were artificially, not by the New World Order. They were modified millions of years ago in another star system. The benefits coming to humankind, if we can get our heads out of our butts, pardon me, and start to learn to think straight and to relate to each other as being of equal value and having something to offer each other. And we don't want to be sold a bill of goods. We don't want to be told fairy tales. We want the truth because we can handle the truth. Then we start to evolve and we beef up this whole evolutionary process. It may surprise you to know that in the Meier material, it's said that ultimately the new spiritual hope for the world is going to come from Russia. They're not the evil people that our country has spent all its time portraying them as and provoking to drive them into a war that we will regret if we're alive to the last incinerating wave, and how we will be attacked with weather weapons, hurricanes, and fire cylinders. It's all described here. So if I'm not patient with all the people in the the paranormal world that think that they know all this stuff, Billy Meier and these people have been trying to guide us without interfering, because they can't force us to be logical. They can't force us to think straight. Either we want to do it or we're going to pay attention to nonsense, whether it's political, religious, paranormal, ufological, you name it, and environmental, things that are not right. Instead, we are told, let's learn how to find the truth. And once we have the truth, let's live by it. That's all. It's simple. It's simple.
So, Michael, if people would like to know much, much more about Billy Meier's work and your work, study it more thoroughly and carefully, look into the whole thing, and hopefully be allowed to ask a lot of critical questions as well.
Anything is open.
How can they actually find this information? Do you have a website, or if people want to contact you to come for a lecture or anything, or the books, please tell us the websites and the contact info.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Lucas. I have a blog that is my most active thing because I'm constantly posting new things, and you'll find some interesting stuff there. It's called theyflyblog.com. Maybe you can do a little graphic or something. Theyflyblog.com. And my website is theyfly.com. Now, I also mentioned I'm going to do a free home study course, which is going to enable anybody that's interested to ask the toughest questions and demand the evidence. The responsibility is up to each person. They can make up their own mind. They don't think it's true. They think whatever. And the best way to get lined up for this, certainly participate in my blog, but friend me on Twitter, friend me on Facebook, so that when I'm announcing this, you'll know about it. And then people can email me now if they have questions. I actually answer all my email. It takes time, but I figure if somebody really wants to know, and I don't care if, I don't answer people that attack me. I answer people that challenge me. That's fine. Someone can say, I think this is a load of crap and it's a hoax and all, but I want to know, well, answer this. I'll go, okay, fine. Because I figured that if they are interested enough and they're honest enough to say they don't buy it, then they'll be honest enough to look at the evidence, right? So I have an email address. They could write to Michael, that's me, at theyfly.com. I will answer emails, but based on the volume I already get, sometimes it takes a week or two. And if you don't hear from me in 2 weeks, you write me back, hey, where's my response? And then I get on it. There's no question that's out of bounds. But when I do my home study course, which I'm going to be making it easy for people to know how to go through analyzing themselves, it won't be complicated.
And people can find information on that on your website.
And my blog, where I'm linking to stuff that's on my website. I've got tons of information.
And your books. Please mention those as well.
Yeah, sure. I didn't write these books. I have 2 books out too on Amazon. They're about different things, about my own experience with something called My Future Self in 1972. We'll talk about that another time. But I have a book on it. It's brilliant. How you can use your cell phone to literally interact with yourself and create and fulfill your future goals step by step. You're your own authority. Okay, so this is one of Meier's books. It's called The Might of the Thoughts. And you saw me hold up the photo book. I have a bookstore. It's on my theyfly.com website. I think it's also linked from my blog. And I have two things there. I have a hard copy where I've got hard copy books, DVDs, ebooks, right? And I have a digital download store where the products that I can download, I can send out. I will be having, I already have a lot on the download store. There will be, hopefully before Christmas, a new download on a healing technique. I've been involved in the world of healing stuff since the 70s, and I have a new, simple video download that I'm going to make available up there that people will be able to use to help de-stress from being on computers. They'll be able to do this sitting or lying down. It's really interesting technique, and I've put out videos on healing techniques and other things, and I've done a lot of things. I have my bio up on my blog and on my website, and people can look at it. Yeah, and I really appreciate your time here. Thank you. So, wow.
It's been very intense, very dynamic, very thought-provoking to have you on the show and to question you about Billy Meier and yourself. And I want to thank you very much for doing this interview with Age of Truth TV, Michael Horn.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Lauga. I'm going to be telling my audience as a build-up that this was, 2.5-hour interview. It's full of controversial stuff and good questions. So I just hope you'll leave in the stuff, even that might make other people uncomfortable. Let them deal with it, because that's who I am. And put the bird. I don't care if you have a disclaimer. The views expressed by our crazy guests are just if it can all be there.
We don't do that. We only allow people to make their own judgment and do their own thinking. We do that with all of our guests.
It's appreciated. I look forward to it. Stay in touch with me.
Thank you, Michael, and have a wonderful day in Arizona.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much to Michael Horn, and thanks to all of you for watching Age of Truth TV. You can support us by clicking onto our website, ageoftruth.tv. And please like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell for notifications. Your support is greatly appreciated. On behalf of the AOT TV team, we thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.